I have confidence that my identity is that of a father, and that everything I do, whether we lead famous at home or whether we don't lead famous at home, whether I'm, working at Lowe's or, working in real estate or starting a landscaping business, or I'm just throwing random stuff out there, by the way. It doesn't matter.
You don't feel called to Lowe's right now?
What I do doesn't matter. My identity is as a son of our Heavenly Father. And from that, my identity then on this earth, not in an idolatrous way, but my identity is that of a father, so that everything that I do is done through the lens of being a dad.
You are listening to the Famous at Home podcast with Dr. Josh and Christi Straub.
Because when it's all said and done, we all want to know that we were famous at home. Welcome back to the Famous at Home podcast. Today we have a conversation, actually an interview.
Of you.
Of me.
On fatherhood.
I'm going to be interviewed. I can't wait to. I have zero idea what the questions are going to be. So, and maybe I can just talk maybe I can just talk and
do what I did.
You don't even need to ask me a question. It'd be a great way to
avoid all questions.
Avoid all the questions that I don't know that you're going to ask. Before we jump in, here's a word from our sponsors. Hey everybody, Josh Straub here with Famous at Home. We want to introduce you to the Famous at Home Starter Bundle. This is something we created just for you. All you have to do is click the button to sign up to receive our workbook, 7 Decisions to Putting Your Family Center Stage. You'll also get a feelings chart handout that you can implement with your kids and with your spouse. And you'll also receive the 100 Commonly Held Values worksheet so that you can sit down with your family and discuss the values that you want to set as a family that will provide vision for how and you want to lead your family in the direction that you're going to head in. So you get those 3 things right away as soon as you sign up. In addition to that, we will send to you our top podcast episodes on marriage, parenting, and family, the most listened to and the most foundational for developing emotional connection with your loved ones. You'll also receive past newsletters, our exclusive weekly newsletter. You'll be enrolled to receive that on an ongoing basis. These are real-time newsletters of what's happening in our lives and what we're doing and implementing to be famous at home that we want to give to you, just weekly nuggets to keep us equipped every single week. And then you'll also receive the weekly podcast episodes as well. This starter bundle is all free. We want to give it to you. Just click the link to sign up. Take it away.
Okay. See, this is the part you usually do. We're back. Thank you. I've never really done this before to interview you. This is a whole flip turned upside down. So we're talking about fatherhood today. And we want to just, obviously you talk a lot about being a dad. You talk a lot about your role as a father, but I would love to dig into a little bit of your story and how you've come to be the dad you are, because I want to honor you, because I think you are one of the most exceptional fathers that I have ever borne witness to.
Thank you.
I mean that. I don't know why I'm crying. You are exceptional. But I know it's not. I saw someone post something yesterday. They said, does it ever hurt you when someone says, oh, you're so lucky for something that you have warred for and like paid the cost of fighting for? People are like, I think people who are, whether it's you've successful or wealthy or you have a wonderful marriage or family, and people are like, oh, you must be nice. You're so lucky. Mm. And I just want to say, I have seen the cost.
You're supposed to be interviewing me. You're not supposed to be making me cry.
So sorry. But fruit and oil are costly. And they come with a crushing. And they come from a pressing. And so when you see people with fruit and like dripping with oil in their life, just know that there has been a great cost. And so I want to ask you a little bit about that, because you teach about a lot of things about fatherhood, and I think you're exceptional at it. But I want people to know what came before that. So I want to ask you about your dad. Ooh. Sorry. I'm more emotional about this than I was about mine. Well, the first one I cried a lot. Anyway, none of this should surprise anyone. So let's talk about your dad, who is gone to be with Jesus. But I'd love for you to just share, what are some things that you received from him that you are so grateful for?
I didn't know this was coming, so wow. Funny enough, I was actually reflecting on some of this today. I don't know why. This morning, as I was taking a shower, which is where I tend to be very reflective, especially when I have a 3-year-old up with me and I can't be reflective other than in the shower. I mean, the first word that comes to my mind is presence. My dad, I can count on one hand the number of wrestling matches in my entire career that my dad missed. And that was because he couldn't get off work in time to be there, to make it. Same thing with my baseball games. The phrase that I use is my dad was always in the stands. He was always there for me. And that wasn't just, and I think I was reflecting on this morning. I know why I was reflecting on this morning. I was reflecting on this morning because our little guy was up early and he was begging me to play with him. And I was asking the Lord, because there was a lot, like my mornings, I genuinely know that I need an hour in the morning before anybody else is out of bed for me to be on my best. Mm-hmm. And I'm not getting that, and I didn't get that this morning. And so I was genuinely reflecting while I was in the shower, like, Lord, just give me perspective. Like, I don't want to be frustrated. I don't want to be resentful. I want to be grateful that I have a little boy who's healthy enough to say, Daddy, play with me, who is in a season where he won't always be in this season. And the thing that I was reflecting on was how my dad, I would do that all the time. Dad, can we go throw baseball? Dad, can we go play basketball? Dad, can we play cards? Dad, can we do... And my dad... I don't remember him saying no. I can remember him saying, okay, it's enough. And I can remember him saying, it's time to, one more time, Dad, one more time. He's like, no, one more time. Like, we're done now. I can remember him saying, we're done now. I don't know that I ever remember him saying no. I'm sure he did. It's not that he never said no. But he said yes so often that I don't remember it. And I realized that's what my dad gave me.
And do you feel like that's probably the most significant impression that he left on you?
Yeah, I do believe so, because, in this world, like we live in today, and we talk about this, is that we're chasing, and I think that there's this level to which my dad didn't chase. No. My dad was not a chaser. He wasn't chasing what the world would offer. In fact, his family was his identity. His family was his identity. And I want to be careful how I say that, because for better or worse, I think we're all placing our identity in something. Mm-hmm. And, one of the biggest things that I'm learning right now, thanks to my friend Jeremy Pryor, is, in ancient Israel and in most cultures throughout the world, your family was your identity. And it wasn't until Industrial Revolution America that we started placing our identity in what we did. Yeah. And my dad didn't place his identity in what he did. He genuinely placed his family, or his identity, in his kids. And again, you can make family an idol, so I want to be careful how I say that. But at the same time, if you're going to put your identity in something in this world, putting it in what you do will always end up empty, because you're always going to be chasing. When you put it in your family and your identity and how you see your life, and ultimately our identity needs to be in Jesus. Our identity has to be in Jesus. But if you put your identity in something that you do, it'll keep you chasing to the point that you turn away from your family rather than turning towards your family. And I felt the tension this morning. I'm playing trains with Micah as I'm thinking about everything that I have to get done and prepped for today, even these interviews, and what we were going to talk about, and getting the lighting set up and doing everything we need to do for podcasting. Even in that process, I'm sitting there and I'm praying and I'm thinking about being present with him so that I'm not chasing. And I was present with him. We built a track, we played cars, Spencer and Gordon were talking to each other and playing and picking up each other's tenders, and we were playing, but I was having this internal war of going, at the end of the day, this is what it's about. At the end of the day, I have never once regretted the time that I played with my kids that day. Not one time have I ever regretted playing with my kids. What I have regretted is not saying yes to my kids. And as I look back on my dad's life, I think that's what he gave me.
I noticed your mic just kept shifting lower and lower and lower. Do you, in reflecting on your dad, and it talks about in the Bible, it's the one promise that it says that honor your mother and father, and basically it will go well with you and your life will be long. And so we really do want to honor those that have gone before us. And I believe that's what has been like a blessing on your life that I've watched, is like you've honored your mom and your dad. And even though you walk through hard things, and my question on the other side of that though, is not acknowledging, what we've missed is also can leave us with gaps, right? That we can overlook things. Or what do you looking back that you feel there was maybe a hole that was left, maybe through your dad's absence, or maybe through things that you missed from him, that he either couldn't give you or now can't give you because he's not here? But where have you felt the holes?
Yeah, and I write about this in Famous at Home in our book, and just kind of some of that journey with my dad. My parents divorced when I was 10. My dad divorced again when I was 19. And I think through that season, one of the things that I realized was, and looking back and, having healed through a lot of this, one of the biggest things that my dad, so even though he was physically present, and so much of my groundedness is in his physical presence in my life, the area that I feel like was missing, that hole that was missing, was that in big emotional moments of my life, my dad wasn't sure how to show up in those moments. My dad wasn't sure how to, but when I look back on that, what I learned and what I realized when I looked into my family history is that my grandfather left my grandmother and my dad when he was 12. So when my dad was 12, his parents divorced. And my dad's dad wasn't involved in his life in those big emotional moments. So my dad gave to me what he knew to give to me, what he knew how to give to me. And that's what I want to honor. And I think from a fathering perspective, the Bible tells us to honor our mother and father. It adds length of days. It goes well with us to honor our mom and father. And I think that honoring is huge. The thing that I want to do, though, is I don't believe that honor lives in denial.
Yeah.
If we live in denial, then therefore what we don't do is heal so that we can level up for the next generation and pass their blessing. And a lot of times what ends up happening is I think we don't know how to pass a blessing to the next generation.
Good.
And so I want to take what my father gave me. I want to take the blessing that he gave me, and I want to bless my children with the blessing that my dad gave me. But I can't do that if I don't heal.
That's good. And
so I think God shows up, our Heavenly Father shows up in that way to heal us, to heal our relationships. My dad and I had an amazing relationship. And there were so many times we talked about these moments where we healed those moments, where my dad apologized for those moments, where there was just beautiful, it wasn't like these things were neglected. There were seasons where they were neglected because who likes conflict? But at the same time, it was really important that we, as I think as sons, as daughters, but particularly as a son, that I look at what my dad gave me and the blessing that he gave me, and I level that up for the next generation. I remember going through, and you may have heard me talk about this in a podcast in the past. I haven't mentioned it much, but I'll talk about it here. There's a story with my grandfather that I want to tell that I think is really important in terms of passing blessing to the next generation. Before I jump into that story, let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsors. Hey everybody, Josh Straub here with Famous at Home. I want to introduce you to something if you haven't already seen it. This is our new book, Famous at Home, 7 Decisions to Putting Your Family Center Stage in a World Competing for Your Time, Attention, and Identity. When a couple or a family comes to us and says, hey, Josh, we have a question. What do we do next? We always point to this book. This is our coaching playbook. This is the play-by-play strategies that we use to help families to be famous at home. And so if you have not picked up this book yet, we highly encourage you to get a copy. You can see a link in the show notes. You can click a link right here in the video, and we would love for you to be able to get a copy of this in your hands. If you want to go deeper than the podcast episodes, this is the way to do that. It's our way of walking alongside your family to help you be famous at home. So I remember going through a healing process, and I was honestly, I was reconciling those big moments. Like, for example, and I talk about this in the Famous at Home book, and we'll put that in the show notes, but where I watched my dad find out that my mom is leaving him in the driveway, and it was just this big moment as a family. And I remember as a son going, I'm going to take care of you, Dad. And I didn't say that, but I chose to stay with my dad. And rather than my dad looking at me and going, hey, no, son, I got you, I'm your dad, it was kind of like I did take care of him. And I think it makes sense that I'm a firstborn fixer. I went to school for counseling, right? It's like there was a healing journey that I had to make in that process. But I remember in that healing journey, as I was processing a lot of that, I had a dream one night. And in that dream, my grandfather, as I mentioned earlier in the episode, my dad and I would play softball together. We were in slow pitch softball leagues together. I grew up as a kid watching him play in slow pitch softball leagues, and then I would join with him and we would play together. Like, it was just, there was a lot of fun around that activity. But my grandfather wasn't involved in that activity. But in the dream, my grandfather was playing, and he was just so excited. He's jumping up and down behind home plate, and he's just a ball of joy. And which is what I remember about him. Anytime he did show up in our lives, he was always bringing us something, telling us jokes. Like, he brought joy with him when he came into the place. And I remember, and sometimes it was goofy dad joke joy, right? But it was like, it was joy. And I remember he got up to the plate in my dream. It was a very vivid dream. And he hit a double, and he gets to second base, and he's jumping up and down on second base. And I remember having Pastor Aaron, who was here, and I processed it with him, and I said, can you help me process this? And as he was praying with me and we processed this dream, he said, you're right now processing a lot of painful moments in your family and things that you went through with your parents' divorce and that type of thing. He's like, but we cannot always focus on the negative. We've got to focus also on the positive, because there's blessing. There's people that have been praying in your family. Mm-hmm. And he said, what I'm picking up from this dream is that your grandfather had a spirit of joy about him, and he hit a double in that dream. God wants to pass a double blessing of your grandfather's joy to you and your generation. And that was one of those like eye-opening moments for me, where I don't think we tend to look at things like that and through that lens, because we're so focused on what didn't go right instead of focusing on what did go right. And so I think we have to live in the tension of, we're not putting in denial. We're not going to sugarcoat and gloss over where the holes were and look at all the good only, and just simply say, my parents did the best that they could. Yes, they did the best that they could with what they were given. But so it's that tension, but then also not living on the other extreme of going, well, my parents didn't give me, I don't know what good they gave me. No, they did give us some good. Somewhere along the way, there was some, and it's living in that tension of where's the blessing that we can pull from this, and being able to be honest about the holes that were left, and being able to bring Jesus into that, looking at it through the lens of honoring our mom and dad, bringing Jesus into that lens, through that lens, looking at it through that lens, and then going, how can I, as a dad, as a husband, how can I level up for my generation now? How can I take what they gave me, and how can I level it up for my generation so that I honor them? Because I believe that that is where blessing comes to the thousandth generation of those who love and seek God's commands.
So good. So good. So with that, you've, really, and I know you've worked through a lot of this, and I think not a lot of us have been given that opportunity. So for people to not feel, never compare someone's, your middle to someone else's end. Not that you're at the end, but you've walked through a lot of that. And so I just encourage you as a mother, as a father listening, like, what is that for you? What is that in your journey? Because if you've never really paid heed to that or really allowed yourself, because I know there's pain there, but just know that there's, beautiful people to walk alongside you as you walk through that journey. And it's well worth the time to do that, even though it's hard. So taking the good and taking also where you've felt the lack, what do you feel like in the last 11 years you've added to this mix that has come from outside influences, whether it's mentors or pastors or teaching? Like, what is the most significant thing you've added to what you were given?
Man, I don't even know where to begin on that. I love to learn, and I feel like that's a big component of this, is I love to learn, but I also love to be open to what the Holy Spirit is. I just don't want to learn for learning's sake. I want to learn because I want to know, what is the Lord leading me to, and how's he telling me to lead my family for such a time as this? And I think one of the biggest lessons that I have learned, and again, there's so many men that I look back on that I'm trying to even, I thought about starting to name some of them, and I'm thinking I'm going to leave people out, and then that's going to be a bad thing. So I don't even know that I want to begin naming. I will
but that just
say,
speaks to the number of mentors that you've
and when I say mentors too, like, I know some of you might be listening and going, well, I don't have a mentor. I wish I had somebody. A lot of times it's just through reading books.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's through listening to podcasts. A lot of times, and then I've had the fortune and blessing of getting to know some of these people and doing life with them. And, and so then you go even deeper. Or if I find men's groups locally that I just pour into, I just show up. And I think showing up a lot of times, but at the same time too, like, I don't show up to every men's event, like, because if I show up to every men's event, then I'm neglecting my family. So I think there's a balance and a wisdom in I've got to be walking arm in arm with other men. I've got to be sitting at the feet of men who've gone before me, of fathers who've gone before me. And then I also need to show up and be with my family. And I think one of the biggest lessons that I have learned and that I've taken away, and I probably have to go in this season right now, there's a couple. Number one, honor up, cast vision down. So honor up, cast vision down. Number two would be, gosh, there's so many. I'm trying to make sure that I order these well. Let me do that one first, and then I'll expand. Honor up, cast vision down, I believe is, and again, I'm going to use Jeremy's name. Jeremy Pryor's helped me just capture this in such a profound way. I think the second component, let me do this, and I'll break these down, and you can ask questions and jump in. Honor up, cast vision down, and you have to have vision. Without vision, people perish. And I'll talk about that personally in my own life. But let me start with honor up, cast vision down, because it flows with what we've just talked about. Honor upstream. So in other words, if you've been learning something about yourself and your family, and all of a sudden God has given you vision for how you're to lead your family, don't go to your parents or your grandparents and cast that vision to your parents or your grandparents, because it's probably not going to be met with reception. It's going to be met with, man, I did that wrong. Or you're telling me I didn't do a good job. We cast vision downstream generations because we're leading those generations, but we honor upstream. And so that's why I talk about honoring your grandparents, honoring your parents. Even if you're going through difficult times and processing pain in your life with them, honor them. Have them tell stories about their growing up years. Ask them good questions. Make it all about building the relationship as opposed to always trying to fix something or being fixed. As Christi mentioned in her interview, it's about your presence. You know, it's about presence. And I think we need to pay attention to that. Cast vision down. For me, I have found that if you don't have vision, and this goes into my second one, I've only recently, I think, have had true vision for what God is leading our family into. I don't know what the details of that completely look like, but I know I have confidence that my identity is that of a father, and that everything I do, whether we lead Famous at home or whether we don't lead Famous at home, whether I'm, working at Lowe's or, working in real estate or starting a landscaping business, or I'm just throwing random stuff out there, by the way. It doesn't matter.
You don't feel called to Lowe's right now?
What I do doesn't matter. My identity is as a son of our Heavenly Father. And from that, my identity then on this earth, not in an idolatrous way, but my identity is that of a father, so that everything that I do is done through the lens of being a dad and being a husband. And because it's that will build our family lineage. It is that will cast that will have blessing, pass blessing to the 1,000th generation. So I want to see my cooking as a family, our doing Shabbat on Friday night. I want to see our ministry, my going out and speaking. I want to see my coaching relationships. I want to see the people we get to pour into, the people we have a privilege to pour into, whether those are in our local community or whether those are abroad, that we have the ability, that our family is a part of all of that. And so I've recently been taking the kids with me to places. We're involved very intimately in their education. We're involved very intimately in every area of their lives to give them the most well-rounded experience to know that they are loved and seen, and that they have identity by being loved and seen, by having a position in the Straub family lineage, that there is a purpose greater than themselves to carry out God's kingdom for them. And that's the vision we cast down. If we don't have that vision as fathers, we will turn to what we do for our identity. And when we turn to what we do for our identity, it always leads, I think it does. I don't know that it will always lead to this, but I think there's a degree to which, don't say always or never, but I think most of the time it will lead to emptiness. It will lead to your marriage not being as fulfilling as what it could be. It will lead to regret of not showing up for your kids in the way that you would want. It would lead to, and there's countless, even evangelists and ministers out there who have come out and said at the end of their lives, I wish I would have spent more time with my kids. I wish I would have spent more time with my family. Never do you hear, I wish I would have spent more time at work. Never do you hear, I wish I would have spent more time in my doing. And I think that is where, and I mean, to that point, I mean, the idolatrous relationship in first century Israel was the family, which is why Jesus says you must leave your father and brother. Like he's coming to address the idols of the day. So that's why he says some of the things he does in the New Testament, is because he's addressing first century Israel. He's not addressing Western America. If he were addressing Western America, he'd be saying you must leave your job. You must leave TikTok. You must leave Netflix. Like leave the things that you're finding your identity in and go, right? So we have to be careful that we won't make these things idolatrous. But at the same time, I think when we switch where our identity is flowing from the Lord and out of a biblical perspective where he makes male and female, he created them to be one flesh and to use the household and the family as a way, as a vehicle to build his kingdom. We need to be able to see the vision through that lens. And when you pull yourself out, and it's a paradigm shift. It is an absolute paradigm shift to pull ourselves out of that. But when we do, I think it gives vision in a fresh way that allows me as a dad. It has allowed me, it's freed me up like crazy to just, and there's so many intimate ways that I think that's going to influence how we live our family and how we do family in the years ahead. And that's what excites me. So honor up, cast vision down, and have vision. And if you don't have vision, pray to God for vision. Pray to God for vision. It is only through time with him that I've, and with other mentors like Jeremy Pryor and others, that I've gotten this vision. And so I think we have to, who we surround ourselves with and spending time with the Lord is huge.
So matters. That was really good. I
realized I did a lot of talking. You didn't ask a lot of questions.
I know. This is the way it went with me. We're people of many words, and then not at sometimes. But anyway, I want to ask 2 quick questions. And they don't have to be, you don't have to extrapolate on them huge, but the last one, second to last one. So we've talked about what your dad gave you, the holes. You talked about what you've added since then, what's been super significant from other mentors and just outside influences. Where does your hardest or most difficult struggle, hurdle, place in fathering right now?
Ooh, that's a good question. Most difficult place. I think,
because we're not going to get this perfect, right?
Finding the time. It's making the time, but it's also finding the time. I mean, there's that whole making the time thing versus finding the time. But I think it's getting the time to give each of the children that I have the individual care that they need from me. In their specific needs and what they're desiring and asking of me. I feel like that's my biggest struggle, because I feel like each of the 3 has something every day that they're desiring of me and asking of me.
What does that do to you? Like, how does that weigh on you?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is I need to let my yes be yes and my no be no. And the hard part is, as a result, you end up saying no more than you want to say yes, because you just don't have the time in the day to say yes to everything and to everyone. But what I've done is I've tried to at least enter into their world each day that I can for the little bit of time that I'm given. And whether that's playing Uno for 10 minutes with Kennedy, or whether that is, reading the Bible with Landon for a couple minutes, or playing trains for a couple minutes with Micah, that I'm at least entering into their space. The hard part is when it gets down into, and as they're getting older now, they're getting into more deeper conversations and wanting to connect. But sometimes those best conversations happen when you're doing an activity together. And so I think for us, for me, it is making sure that I'm making the time to give them what they need. And this is where Jon Tyson has helped me a lot, is just even as I start to think about the years ahead, what that looks like for how I disciple our children and the set times that I'm going to need to set in place. It's going to take intentionality, like true intentionality of waking up, doing devotions with them first thing in the morning, each individually, and doing that well. And I think those are things that and I would highly encourage getting the Intentional Father book. Those are things. Jon Tyson's another one of those names of men that have influenced me pretty significantly. So that's my challenge.
Okay. So I want you to finish this sentence for me as we close. Okay.
Are you going to make me cry?
Nope.
Okay, good.
As a dad, I'm aiming for this one thing.
Kind of are going to make me cry. weren't supposed to make me cry. As a dad, I'm aiming. I don't know how to grammatically make that correct. As a dad, my primary aim is to help my children know that they can trust Jesus. That they can trust him. Because if I can help them trust him, everything else in their life will be. No matter what they go through. I want them to turn to him the way that they turn to us now. I want them to be able to turn to him like that for the rest of their lives and know that they can trust him.
Amen. Well said. I like interviewing you. This was a delight.
You weren't supposed to make me cry.
You were a delight. I didn't actually know that one would. I just know how it's so hard because even as you were talking there, like there's just so many demands on you as a father. There's so much pulling at you, and the overwhelm of that can be huge. And so if you were forced to boil it down to aiming at one thing, I think that sometimes gives us a lot more clarity on all the other things and what comes first. It's a great point. So
it's a great point.
Well said, my love.
Well, I would encourage you to take the question that Christi asked me and answer it for yourself this week as we are in Father's Day week coming up. And, with Father's Day coming up, I think it's important that we ask those questions. What is my aim as a dad? And if your dad is still alive and walking this earth, that you find a way to honor up this Father's Day. So keep in mind, until next week, that the greatest red carpet you will walk is through your front door.
Keep being famous at home.